Hi, my name is Grace Peterson, and today I'll be presenting on A Modern Day Gilded Age, Why the U.S. Should Mind the Gap. So first, I want to take you on a little roadmap of how we're going to go through this presentation. So first, how this problem began, when it started, how it started, and why it's a problem today. What are the economic implications of it, the political implications of it, the social implications, past approaches that governments, the U.S. and abroad have tried, and then some policy recommendations of my own. So first, wealth inequality has always been an issue. You see it from the beginning of history, causing the French Revolution, causing the Great Depression. But however, the extent that we're seeing wealth inequality as of currently is much larger, and it is growing exponentially through the years. So on this graph, you see wealth inequality through the years from 1917 till 2011, and you see the top 1%, which is the blue part, has grown in mass, while the middle classes and lower classes have shrunk less and less. So basically, the distance between the two groups is growing, and it's growing faster than ever. So economic implications. We have seen examples of negative impacts of wealth inequality repeatedly. As I stated before, the French Revolution, also the Great Depression, one of its largest causes was the in mass wealth inequality. And right now, our the distance between the extremely rich and the extremely poor is at the same level of just before the Great Depression. Additionally, you see less intergenerational mobility when there is greater inequality in a nation. So the graph on the right, it expresses the level of income inequality in comparison to the intergenerational mobility. So basically, countries that have more inequality, the people who are poor stay poor, and the people who are rich stay rich. Basically, like, there's no moving in your social class. What you're born in, you kind of stay there when there's more inequality in our country. And you can see the U.S. is kind of right in the middle. We're not really leading anyone on this. Next, the other graph, kind of the same thing. It's the percentage of people who are born into one class and reach the top quartile throughout their life. So basically, people who do have intergenerational mobility, people who are able to overcome poverty. And as you can see, the US is relatively very low on this graph in comparison to a lot of advanced countries, and some that are even considered less advanced than us. There are also a lot of political implications. The biggest one being that when there's more inequality, more poverty, those in poverty are more likely to revolt, more likely to be upset with their situation. Meanwhile, you also see, so the first graph on the top right, it's hard because everything is flipped, with basically several charts. It says relation between preferences of revolt. That basically says that there is a correlation between unemployment and your income level and likelihood to revolt against your government. While the other graph on the top, it also talks about the likelihood or the attitude about inequality. And it says basically that the working class people have a much more negative attitude about inequality, while the higher paid people don't really see it as an issue because it really doesn't affect them if you're on top, which really makes sense. But the fact that there is so much data of all these different pieces kind of emphasizes all the negative implications of this problem. And then the last chart on the bottom basically shows like how important money is. So 91% of the time, candidates running for election, if they have more money, they're going to win. So basically, if you're poor, like, there is no you have a less likelihood to have an impact in politics. And then the people who do donate are from the top 1% of America. So the people who are the richest have the biggest impact on the politicians. And politicians already are part of the 1% because they already have to be rich to get there. And also, 70% of Congress's time is spent begging donors, begging these top 1% for more money, for more influence for them, essentially leading to a lot of skewed political implications. And lastly, the social implications. When you have areas of poverty, the wealthier people are more likely to move away, causing a social distance between these levels of economics classes. So rich people are less likely to care about poor people if there are no poor people in their area, and the likelihood of poor people living in the same area of rich people is very, very low. Additionally, if you're in a poor area, you're going to have lower education because the taxes of your area basically fund your social programs, your education. So lower income areas are going to have less quality social programs and things of this nature. Additionally, in these graphs, we see not only is the separation by wealth, it's also by gender and race. So it is much more likely that a single woman of color will be impoverished than a married white couple, or overall white people are on a higher poverty level than people of color. We see this time and time again. Basically, because of our history, there are several races that are stuck in the poverty, below the poverty line, and it basically causes more of a divide, because not only can these people not agree on social and economic issues, but also they have different backgrounds. So they seem miles and miles apart, even though we are all United States citizens. So some of the past approaches that have happened, there are a lot of things that have been done to try and combat wealth inequality. However, some of the ones that stuck out were right to buy and baby bonds. This was in the United Kingdom. Right to buy was basically subsidized government housing, where people could pay a little less for government quality housing. However, the problem with this, it ran out of money pretty quickly because it wasn't set up for a long-term plan. And also, I think people took a lot of advantage of it, so there would need to be a lot more checks in this system. Also, baby bonds were established, which would give babies born in a span of 15 years a small bank account that would increase by a very small amount throughout their 18 years, and they would basically start out with around $20,000 when they're ready to enter adulthood. Both of these proved very effective in combating problems of inequality in the area. However, they just couldn't be sustained for long periods of time. Additionally, in the United States, the war on poverty, in 1960, 22.1% of Americans were living in poverty, so they created the Food Stamp Act, which is still used today. Unfortunately, the current administration has changed the rules, so a lot of people have been taken off the Food Stamp Act, and it's become a lot less effective. Social Security, we still pay this today. It is a retirement program, Medicare and Medicaid, healthcare for poor and people who need it, and then Title I as well. So policy recommendations of my own. As the biggest thing I would like to take away from this is wealth inequality isn't an issue in and of itself. It is inevitable, but the rate at which ours is growing is dangerous for our society. So, additionally, people are less likely to be upset if the government takes action to combat this issue. So impoverished people are more likely to revolt if they see the government's not doing anything to help them. And right now, the government isn't doing anything, and the problem is getting worse. So you don't have to apply all of these policy recommendations. However, a little bit of some of them would do something in helping the citizens ease their mind of, the government doesn't care about me. The government has given up on those that are in the lower classes. So increasing minimum wage, it has proven effective in many states. Investments in education starting earlier and continuing later. So daycare programs for those who can't afford it, and then re-education classes for older people. Inheritance taxes. Right now, wealth tax is only taxed if it's above a certain level. If you just lower that, any inheritances would keep the wealthy a little less wealthy while still retaining their wealth, but ensure that the gap between the 1% and the mass is not getting too large. And address tax evasion, more penalties so people don't evade their taxes. An infrastructure program, we saw this in the New Deal. Basically, all of our bridges are not safe. Do some kind of program to rebuild infrastructure while also paying low-class citizens and workers that want jobs. Government subsidized housing, much like right to buy, and maybe some sort of baby bond program as well. As I said, wealth inequality is not inherently bad. It is natural, but the rate at which ours is growing and the lack of government action makes us our country much more likely for revolt and internal conflict, both on an economic, social, and political front. And these are my references, so thank you.